I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Tuesday, September the 10th, brought to you in part by the nationalbeefwire.com, and we're featuring 4 state stockyards in Exeter, Missouri. You can watch that right on the National Beef Wire on channel 6030. When is enough enough? I tell you what, this market is dropping so fast. I was talking with Ellington Peak here in Ogallala for a minute there right before we got into our rooms, and that man is 91 years old, and he said, I don't think I've ever seen it this bad. Been in the business his entire life, and I realize prices are higher than what they were at times in his life, but he's never seen it fall so far, so fast, so hard, and so ridiculously low in comparison to what everything else is costing, and people losing their ranches, people losing their houses, people going broke. And we've got to do something. I know we're not famous for getting together, but these cattle people now, we've got to get together. I realize it's kind of the nature of a cattleman to go rogue, to be independent, to kind of be hard-headed. But it's time. We've got to get together. And I don't know what we're going to do. We can't rely on the government, guys. They're not going to help us. I was talking with another friend of mine from Missouri on Monday afternoon. He's a sale barn owner, a backgrounder, feeds cattle, been in the business all of his life with the rest of his family there. And he'd been putting calls in to his congressional people there. He finally got a call back from an aide, a senator's aide, state senator's aide there in Missouri. And they called him about maybe 4:30, 4:45. Called him and asked him if he could kind of explain what was going on. And of course, the guy that called him, the aide, probably didn't have any background or experience, and so he was having to brief him on the whole thing before it got going. And he had just talked about everything, the flush of the market and everything, and how people were going broke and this and that, and how the packers were monopolizing the entire industry, and how it was going to ruin a whole segment of our community, our agriculture community, and everything was going fine until about 4:59, and then the aide interrupted him and said, sir, I appreciate the call. He said, I'm sorry, but everybody's leaving the office here. It's almost 5 o'clock. I'm going to have to go. That's what we're up against. That's where we're at. How would you like to have that guy helping you if you had to pull a calf or something like that? That's what we're dealing with, people. And they're not going to help. We've got to do it ourselves. I'm going to get on my soapbox here a little bit. And where does it start? All of our markets. I told you on the last visit how cheap some of these calves are getting, especially in some of these smaller sales where you got small producers just selling a few here and a few there, and they don't fit together one at a time. So you got shippers putting those together for people to background. The calf prices have just completely fell out of bed. I mean, it's a bloodbath. And, I've always been around the sale barns talking. They say, how bad is it? And I say, it's awful bad. And they say, well, is there any blood coming out of the ring yet? And it's getting about that close. Now, I tell you what, it's just absolutely ridiculous how much this market has dropped. The yearlings aren't bringing anything. So where does it start? We can't do anything about the meat prices. The meat in the stores has not changed. And these packers are making plenty of money. $400 plus a head, maybe $500 plus a head, and everybody else going broke. So where can we start to help it? At your fat cattle level. I realize only about 15% of the cattle are sold on the negotiated cash market each week, but then the bulk of the rest of the 85% are sold based off of that price the next week, and that's just the nature of the beast. The hell of it is, the packers still need those 15% of cattle. So that's all we got. That's all we got. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, but you guys that are selling negotiated cash have got to stop this. I know that it's cool to sell your fat cattle. It used to be a lot of fun to sell the fat cattle, get on the phone and haggle back and forth and see if what you can get done and this and that. But there's no game in it anymore. How much fun has it been the last 6 weeks? It hasn't been any fun at all. And if you're the first one to trade, then you're the GOAT. and everybody's mad at you for setting the market lower. But I tell you what, you've got to get together. You can't sell them individual anymore. It's like herding cats. It's impossible. You can't do it. We've got to get together. And it appears nobody wants to support the online fat cattle auction. Maybe it's true that it's not efficient right now to send all your cattle to the sale barn, because there's a lot of sale barns that could get several cattle and they may not get a packer buyer until you got it established. I think it would work in the long run, but so what have we got to do? You got to get in and pool those cattle. I'm really asking you guys to get together and do that, and I'm not getting anything out of it. You got to get together with a cooperative marketing agency. Okay, who's the best equipped to do that? Consolidated Beef Producers, headquartered right there in Canyon, Texas. They've got guys that will take your show list. They're not getting into your business or anything. They will take your show list and they will get them with everybody else's show list, and they will try to get as much money for your cattle as they can get. And the more cattle they get, the more leverage they have. And the bigger percentage of the cattle that are in loose hands to sell that they have the control of marketing on, the better they can do. We've got to get together. It's not just in Texas. The CBP can help you out in Kansas. They can help you out in Nebraska. They can help you out in Iowa. They can help you around the fringes. They can absolutely do it. Another one that I talk about is Producers of Omaha can do the same thing. Get a hold of one of their agents and get them together. Don't sit out there with a pen or two or three of cattle, or a few loads of cattle, or one load of cattle, and think that we can hold this deal together. We've got to hold it at the top, because this trickle of down market is trickling all the way down, and it's hurting our producers. It's hurting the backgrounders, your feeders. They can't afford to do anything, and ultimately it's killing the board. And so then you can't find anybody that can buy cattle that will hedge, and it's going to wipe us out if we don't do it. I talk about 1998 when they did this to the hog market, but everything is lining up for these packers. There's a lot of fat cattle that are market ready in the southern plains, like the next 45, 60 days. So they're making like they can't choke them all. We've seen that they can choke them all. One of our biggest kill weeks so far this year has been minus the Tyson plant in Holcomb. They can kill them. They need the cattle. When they're making that much money, they're greedy enough. They want to kill as many cattle as they got. You got to get together and hold them back and make them give you something for those cattle. It's ridiculous. We traded on Monday morning on a sharply lower down market this week. And you know your packers are needing cattle. They might put out, it's that packer psychology. Oh, we're at capacity right now, and these poor workers, they haven't seen their families because we're working on Saturday, and they just have to have some downtime. Bullshit. Those guys want to work as much as they can because they've got bills to pay. A lot of them are sending money to other countries. They want to work. They will work as many hours as they give them. And they want to work. Don't listen to all that packer psychology. Don't listen to them saying, oh, these formula cattle, we can't get them all killed, and we've already got those tied up. So any gift we give you of a bid on these negotiated cattle, they want the negotiated cattle too. They need them all. And now we've got some of these formula yards. The packers are letting them turn in more numbers than usual. That's how backed up they are. Don't give me that. Talk to feedlots that are hooked in on a formula deal, and your packers are pulling the cattle a week early. Yeah, there's a lot of cattle out there, but they can handle a lot of them. Got to get together. Quit taking less money for your cattle every week. I realize that they're starting to get heavy, but for the most part, everybody's fairly current. Our carcass weights are increasing seasonally, but we're not in a jam yet. We talk about the show lists that they put out. A lot of that is more packer psychology. But you remember a week ago we had huge show lists. The show lists increased percentage-wise big time, especially in the southern plains. Then we didn't have a very good movement, and then all of a sudden this week the show lists are a bunch lighter. The reason that the show lists are a bunch lighter is there is some guys that are starting to resist. Talked to some guys, and one of them is Brad Hahn and people that he associates with. He's out of Fredonia, Kansas. He's got cattle on feed. He's in a group with some other feedlots and guys that normally sell negotiated. They refused to put anything on the show list. They knew they were going to bid them less money this week and just assumed they were going to take it. They're not going to put it on there. But you can't leave those guys hanging out to dry. You got to get in and help them a little bit. We got to cut them off. You got to do something. If we don't do it, I tell you what, we're at risk of losing everything. I mean, not only guys losing their ranches, losing their farms, losing their houses, losing all their equity, but we're in a really, really tender spot right here. We could lose the whole industry independent-wise, because that's what the packers want to do. They're not in here to support family farms and ranches. They want to take it over, just like they have with the chickens, just like they have with the hogs, and it's getting close to happening, guys. They will contract calves at weaning. What kind of a price you think they want to give you for those? And then they will have control of those calves all the way until they're slaughtered. They're going to take everybody out. You guys that like to turn a few cattle out here and turn some cattle out seasonally, you like to graze cattle, you like to buy cattle and feed them, you like to put deals together, that's going to go away if they have their way. We've got to get together and do something about that. But I know that I'm preaching to the choir for the most part. Share this video with people that can do something about it. Share it with people that don't know anything about the cattle business. Share it with somebody that can do something about it. Let's look at the board for Monday. October live cattle futures down 67 at 94.20. That's our spot live cattle contract, 94.20. December's down 57 at 99.17 on the close. September feeder cattle down 52 cents at 132.82. October down $1.07 at 129.82. Talk about your fat cattle trade. I want to give you first the weighted average on last week's trade. Last week's trade, 71,400 head, still light. We thought it was going to be a little bit heavier, but guys are starting to resist. The rest of you guys got to throw in with them. 98 to 107 was the range on your live steers and heifers. Mostly $1 to $1.03. But your weighted average on live steers was 101.73, down $3.86. At your heifer live weighted average was almost $1 lower for absolutely no reason. It's just more tricks your packers are playing. Are playing with you. The heifers, heifers are at a discount because they don't gain as fast. But once they're finished, once they're fat, they're worth just the same. They dress basically the same. You get the hide pulled off of them. It's kind of hard to differentiate between them. But live heifers, the weighted average on them in the 5-area feeding reach, $100.60, down right at $4 from the previous week. Dressed price range, steers and heifers was 160 to 170, was mostly 163 to 170, and your weighted average on dressed steers and heifers was a bunch lower. Your steers dress weighted price 165.83, down $5.69 compared to just the previous week. We had trade Monday morning. I mentioned it a while ago. Why in the world would you take less money on a Monday morning? Why would they come out and bid less money? Because they want cattle and they need cattle. Got to cut them off. Okay, so we had northern trade at 97 in Iowa and Nebraska and 160 dressed. So that's all the way at the bottom. That's $1 lower than anything we heard last week live, and all the way at the bottom of the range on a dress basis. In the southern plains, we had some packers leaking information or telling people they were getting cattle bought at 96. Truth is, they bought a few loads of cattle at 96. They were junk. That's the way they work. That's more packer psychology, wanting to advertise that price. Did have some $97 trade in the southern plains too. But it's unbelievable. We're just like sheep out here. But you can't just go around with that independent spirit anymore. If we don't group together, we're dead. We are sunk. Okay, here at Oglala, Nebraska, at the Western Video Market's big sale at the Haythorne Ranch, getting ready to go out there and do speaking engagement there with a group of consigners, buyers, and representatives for Western Video Market. Talked to Justin Neeson. This is a kind of a late consignment. They didn't know what they were going to have. But the Earp cattle, he had some on the last video. They're probably some of the best green yearlings that they have in the northern plains up in the mountain states. But they got quite a reputation. They're out of Dillon, Montana. They'll absolutely explode when you put them on feed. Got over 10,000 of them, nearly 11,000 of them on the sale that starts first thing Tuesday morning here, 8 o'clock Central. You got to get on that sale. You can get on at WVM Cattle or on dvauction.com. You can get on and view and bid right there on that sale, and those are going to be some of the best cattle. You know the market's going to be tough because of the way things are. They've got a lot of other good yearlings on there, got a lot of good calves on there too, but they're going to need all the help they can get. But mostly all steers on those Earp cattle, and some spayed heifers. But they told Justin when they consigned them, said, we're not appraising these cattle, we're going to sell them. So get on there, bid on those cattle, watch them sell. They're going to need all the help they can get, but if you want some really, really good cattle with outstanding ability to gain, they might do it. And a lot of people think this thing could turn around. There might be a lot of upside to it. Don't miss out on an opportunity just because you're so sick about the way the market is. Talk about some other feeder markets. Your real-time index on Cattle Market Central late in the day on Monday sitting at 134.67. That's down $1.78 from the end of last week. Your last CME cash feeder cattle index was sitting at 137.77, but it's going to take it a while to catch up. Look at some markets on Monday. Oklahoma National Stockyards in Oklahoma City, 9,600 head. You're like, why would they have that many cattle? People have been holding them and holding them and holding them ever since the fire at Tyson. They've been holding these cattle back thinking this market was going to come back around. Now we've got all this extra pressure, and we got the packers taking advantage of us, and the market just keeps going down. At some point you got to puke them. And that's concerning me that we haven't had good runs here the last several weeks. And part of it is because we've got a lot of places to run those cattle. We've got good moisture conditions in most places, so a lot of guys are still dealing with green grass, so they haven't marketed their cattle. Talking with Rick Huffman, he reminded me of a story that I've heard many times over the years, ever since I was a little kid. But you know, one of the three things here that usually causes cattle people to go broke: green grass, a whiskey glass, and a woman's smile. But Oklahoma National Stockyards, 9,600 head, compared to 2 weeks ago, because they didn't have a sale on Labor Day. Feeders $4 to $10 lower. We knew it was going to be a foot lower. It was nearly a foot, $4 to $10 lower. Not a good test on the calves, but they called them sharply lower. But did have one good quote of some fancy steer calves there at Oklahoma National Stockyards. 118 head, weighed 567 at $153. And then look at this quote that I pulled off Cattle Market Central from National Livestock. Had 89 head, 654-pound fancy steers, bring $1.45. That is awful, awful good for the way things are right now. Joplin Regional Stockyards, 5,900 head there, compared to 2 weeks ago, $3 to $8 lower. Individual quote, the best one I saw out of Joplin was 107 head of 748-pound feeder steers at 142 and a quarter. And you know, things are still a little bit wild up when you get up in the Midwest, and they always will be better than they are other places. But at Tama Livestock Auction, Tama, Iowa, I know we mostly talk about it being a fat cattle sale, but they have good feeder cattle auctions there too. Got farmer feeders there. They had 58 head of 581-pound steer calves at $170. That's your feeder flash for Tuesday.